All right, today we're jumping into one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, often misunderstood ideas in the spiritual life, the dark night of the soul. We're going to be guided by the classic work from a 16th century mystic, the one and only St. John of the Cross.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever been on a real spiritual high? Prayer feels easy, God feels so close, and then suddenly it's just gone. You try to pray, but it feels like you're talking to a brick wall. Everything feels dry, empty. You might even feel totally abandoned. It's a rough place to be.
Well, St. John of the Cross had a name for exactly this experience. He called it the dark night. But here's the part you've got to hear. This isn't a sign that you've failed or done something wrong. It's not the end of the road. In fact, he argues it's a secret, hidden path to a much, much deeper and more real relationship with God. Okay, let's get into it.
So who does this happen to? Well, here's the crazy part. It doesn't usually happen to people who are spiritually lazy. It happens to the ones who are really, truly trying. St. John calls this person the beginner.
Think of this beginner stage like this. You've just decided to get serious about your spiritual life, and God treats you like a loving mom with a brand new baby. Prayer is sweet, meditation is amazing, you feel this real, tangible connection. It's that honeymoon phase, This is what St. John calls the sweet and delectable milk that God gives to help a new soul get started.
But what happens when a child has to grow up? The mother has to wean them. And this right here is the central metaphor St. John uses. God, like that loving mother, eventually pulls back those easy good feelings, not because he's mad, but because he wants us to grow. He puts bitter aloes, so to speak, on the breast to push the soul towards something more substantial, more adult.
So why is this whole weaning process even necessary? Well, St. John says that hiding underneath all that early enthusiasm are some subtle problems. Take spiritual gluttony, for example. This is when we get addicted to the feeling of being spiritual. We're chasing the emotional high from a great retreat or a powerful prayer session instead of just seeking God himself, even in the quiet moments. Or how about spiritual pride? That's when we secretly start feeling a little superior because of our spiritual practices, maybe looking down on others who aren't as advanced as we are. The dark night is basically the medicine God uses to purify us of exactly this stuff.
So the soul has been fed, it's gotten a great start, but now it's time to grow. This is the moment it's brought right up to the edge of what St. John calls the night of sense. And man, the transition is stark. It feels like a switch has just been flipped. God intentionally shuts the door to that easy, sweet, spiritual water the soul got so used to. And it's a deliberate act of love, designed to purge our senses of their attachment to what you could call spiritual candy and get us ready for the real lasting meal.
Just look at the change. It's a total 180 of your spiritual experience. Before, prayer was a joy. Now it feels tasteless, even bitter. Before, meditation flowed easily. Now you feel like you can't even take one step forward. The very things that used to fill you up now just leave you with this profound sense of dryness and what feels like total emptiness.
Now, of course, the first thing anyone in this situation is going to ask, is this from God, or am I just messing up somehow? St. John totally understood this, and he gave us some really clear guideposts to help us figure out what's going on.
Right? This is the critical question. Am I going through a purifying trial from God, or am I just being lazy? Am I depressed, or is there some sin in my life? I mean, the feelings can seem really similar, but where they're coming from and what they're for are completely different.
So St. John gives us a 3-point checklist. First, it's not just that spiritual things are boring. Nothing gives you pleasure. Not your favorite hobbies, not worldly comforts, nothing. A lazy person would just go find pleasure somewhere else, right? Second, even with all the dryness, your mind is anxiously stuck on God. You're worried that you're failing him. This is the total opposite of being lukewarm, where you just wouldn't care. And third, you find you literally can't meditate or pray the way you used to. Those old techniques, the guided imagery, it all feels hollow. It's like that whole part of you has just been turned off.
But if a soul can just hang in there and persevere, it finds out that the darkness wasn't the obstacle, it was the path itself. So what's the destination? What's the amazing outcome that this whole painful journey leads to?
This is the first verse of the poem this whole book is about. And just listen to the language. The soul doesn't say, "Oh, what a terrible trial." It says, "Oh, happy chance." It describes the dark night as a fortunate thing, like a secret escape where it went out kindled in love, because the house of its own passions and senses was finally quiet. Because through this tough process, the soul gets these incredible gifts. You gain a deep, real humility. You learn to love God just for who He is, not for the good feelings He can give you. You stop judging other people so harshly, maybe online or in your own head, because you're so aware of your own junk. And you get this profound inner peace, a quiet center in our loud, anxious world, because that demanding house of sensuality has finally been put to rest.
So at the end of the day, here's the number one takeaway. The dark night is not God being absent. It's God being present in a new, deeper, and purifying way. It's God working on you in secret, kind of like a surgeon who has to cause some pain to bring about a much greater healing.
And that leaves us with one last thing to really think about. We all go through dry seasons, times of confusion, moments where it feels like something or someone is absent from our lives. What if, instead of seeing those as signs of failure, we saw them as invitations? Invitations to finally let go of our childish attachments and step into a more grown-up, more profound, and more authentic way of living.